Electricast.
Cars say a lot about who we are.
It represents freedom for a lot of people.
This season on Drive, I'm going to talk to all sorts of different people.
I looked at car names.
Yes.
And
yes.
I found all the car names that have science or astronomically
it's
inspired.
Crazy.
It's huge.
It is. Yes, I happen to be CEO of Ford Motor Company. For me, it's all about cars, movement, and our mutual passion for things that get us around. This is Drive, and I'm Jim Farley.
This episode is brought to you by Paramount Plus. Ewan McGregor stars as Count Alexander Rostov in A Gentleman in Moscow, the new limited series based on the best-selling novel. Stream it on March 29th with the Paramount Plus with Showtime plan. Visit ParamountPlus.com to try it free.
Hold on to your butts.
We are changing the course of history as we see it. That is what Wesley demands.
Now, this affects Iris. Iris, where are you?
What you feel only matters to you. I do not entertain hypotheticals. The world as it is vexing enough.
Iris, I have a tip for you.
Don't take drugs!
Or whatever movies with Wesley and Iris.
What up, and welcome to Or Whatever Movies. I'm your co-host, Iris, and I'm here with my older brother, who I'm thankful for.
Wesley. Aww.
Today, we're talking a movie, a biographical fantasy, streaming and available on Pluto TV from 2004, Finding Neverland.
What was that? Was that a Scottish brogue?
Yep, that was my attempt at one.
Man.
You tried
Johnny
it.
Depp has that. He's got it, like Finding Neverland. Neverland. I don't know. It's hard. It's like, what is it that Scottish people can't say? Purple burglar alarm.
How do they say it?
Purple burglar alarm. And it's the best thing on YouTube.
Purple burglar alarm?
Yep.
So, why can't I say biopic?
I guess you can. As long as you understand the etymology of the word or whatever, that's a portmanteau word or a condensing of biographical picture.
Biopic.
It never felt right to me. Once I understood what it was.
Biopic.
You can say biopic.
Okay, so this is a biographical fantasy, otherwise known as a biopic. You called this a rando movie, but I think this is a rather appropriate Thanksgiving feel-good movie, don't you?
Sure.
But I definitely found myself channeling some Wesleyness in watching Finding Neverland.
Oh yeah, because Wesley also channeled some Wesleyness. So what is your distinction?
I found myself stone-faced and completely detached from the whole Porthos the bear scene.
Look, this was kind of before this movie established itself to be what it is, because you don't even almost notice it. You do, but maybe as a kid, you don't notice it when they seamlessly transition between the actual Western setting and the fantasy, like the backyard and the Western fantasy, right?
Yeah, pretty
seamless. When they're doing the Cowboys and Indians?
Yeah, go Mark Forster.
Which I can say because they call it Cowboys and Indians because it was 100 years ago. But even that is not a real set. Like the fantasy set is a kid's idea of what the Wild West was like. But still, a kid can make the distinction so that I personally feel like if he were going to, in a fantasy sequence, dance with a bear, it should have been a real bear. Brad Pitt did it. They could have done it.
But it was a real bear in the fantasy sequence.
No, it was a dude in a bear suit.
Oh, wait, like a real bear, like a la Grizzly Man style?
Yeah, well, not a grizzly bear, but there are trained black bears and stuff, and he could have gone around. He could have twirled a frickin' bear around. If I had the clout as Johnny Depp, I would have insisted. I would have been like, I'll be in my trailer until you bring me Bart the bear.
Bart the bear. I thought he died.
He did. There are like 4 Barts.
My favorite bear scene in all of literary history is, of course, the bear who makes his appearance at the end of Henderson the Rain King.
The roller coaster bear?
Yes, who wets himself. Poor bear.
And they're like terrified and holding each other. Man, I don't know if that's a spoiler. That's the deepest cut so far on Or Whatever Movies.
So I'm watching Porthos the bear, or Porthos the dog become Porthos the bear, and I'm just like, the magic is lost on me. And to be honest, I don't think that the magic ever really sunk in. I don't find Finding Neverland to be magical and delightful. And
what are we doing
flights
then?
of whimsy. No, I'm not saying that, but I'm not saying that it's bad. I find it to be more like a gentle, calming balm. And I think the tone is entirely set by Johnny Depp's performance, which is some kind of like relaxant for my central nervous system. Like watching him and his self-possession and his innocence, even though he's kind of a jerk, is very calming to me.
Doesn't seem like he's a jerk, man. People are on the other side of that now.
I'm not talking about recent Johnny Depp canceling stuff. I'm talking about J.M. Barrie is kind of a big jerk to his wife.
Yeah. So you felt that this movie, would you say that it's bull's pizzle? Was it absolute rubbish from start to finish?
Was that a Dustin Hoffman quote?
Well, I think it was one of the theater goers. Like, you want the calming, soothing, sleepy time tea presence of J.M. Barrie in your tragic household?
How is my household tragic?
Huh?
Oh, you mean like if I was like a widow with 4 boys?
If Brian kicked off with cancer of the jaw and you were like coughing and not feeling so hot yourself, you'd want this dude coming around?
Well, Sylvia didn't seem all that interested in having a romantic relationship. She seemed perfectly content with, his surrogate dadness and his presence and him generally looking out for them.
Was she living entirely for her many, many boys and was just like, nope, all done with life and love and kind of thing? Because both Roger Ebert and Richard Roeper, who doesn't count because he's not a real movie critic, said that they were charmed by Johnny Depp because there's no hint whatsoever of impropriety with the little boys. There's no hint of creepiness.
None
but
whatsoever.
Does that apply for... Okay, fine. He plays Barry, like wanting to be only a good presence in the boy's life. But does that apply to Sylvia, the Kate Winslet character, as well? Like, she's just like, no, I'm all good. You come around and there's no hint. There was definitely a hint, I think. Maybe it was us or me projecting. But at the very least, there was some kind of Mary Poppins Bert thing happening.
Yeah, there was deep affection between the two of them. I think that's clear. Johnny Depp is kind of at the height of his androgynous beauty in this movie, like chiseled and perfect, and like I find his face to be mesmerizing, but he's also all smooth down there, Ken style. You know what I mean? Whereas, yeah, maybe Julie Christie, that's the mom's name, right? Mrs. de Maurier. She's like, look at you, you're all flushed. And I think that there was still some life and vitality, sexual vitality to Sylvia, but that wasn't of foremost importance to her. And I think that she also knew that she was going to kick it soon, too.
Well, she did know before any of this happened. She didn't want to go over it again, her symptoms, and he found out that she knew something, which is terrible, which may have been why when she saw his influence, she was more welcoming of a rando, because she maybe was worried she was on her way out.
But he's also not a rando. She knows from the instant he introduces himself that he's not only a playwright, but a rather famous one.
Right. Which is not indicative in the opening scene when his play bombs horribly.
Right.
So he's just in a downturn, a down period.
Well, you have to have that down period in order for, Peter Pan to be a rapturous delight and success.
Yeah, it's just the gully. He'll get over it.
A little gully.
Kate Winslet, I think, is a passionate actor, and I think she's very breathy, and you can read a lot on her face, and obviously she's got a lot going on in her life. But she smacks to me as a normal person, which I think is a real strength for her as an actor. I do think that Johnny Depp, for some reason, has to earn it for me every time. And I'm like, oh, he's working hard on that Scottish accent, staying faithful to J.M. Barrie, as much as this movie doesn't really stay all that faithful to J.M. Barrie. Very important to him. But behind those chiseled cheekbones, I think he has real ability. And so he does sell this for me. It's weird to see kind of a straightforward Johnny Depp character where he's not weird.
Right? Like he's not hiding behind any makeup or costuming. I mean, I guess it's pretty elaborate costuming, but his face is just naked and out there.
And all pretty and all that stuff. In contrast to, apparently this movie was held on to for a year. There was some rights issues with the Barrie estate and Peter Pan, which came out in 2003. So they agreed to hold this movie for a year so that they can say Barrie's actual words based on the book or something like that. So this movie actually was held on to for a year. It says 2004, but it was completed and ready in 2003, which is the same year as Pirates of the Caribbean, The Curse of the Black Pearl. And that is noteworthy because Johnny Depp does the Jack Sparrow accent. It's not 100%. He tries to change it up because also Jack Sparrow is not Scottish or whatever, but it's definitely there. You like your ear picks up right away, right? And it's almost like he came right from Pirates, as I understand it, to do this movie. And I'm like, he did Captain Jack, even though it's kind of weird. And likewise, apparently, at one point when he's all grumbly and flicking through the playbill for Peter Pan, Dustin Hoffman was supposed to be portrayed like the mom character as Captain Hook. And he's like, I'm not doing Hook again. And so they had to change it. But it's weird, like this time period, and that's only what it would have been at the time of filming, 3 years after the release of Hook. So they're both in this sort of piratey fantasy, Peter Pan-y kind of world. It felt strange to me because they're both playing like normal people who are anything but normal because we just saw them in these fantastical roles.
Yeah, and Peter Pan adjacent roles as Captain Hook and Jack Sparrow, respectively.
Yeah, but all that to say, I think he Johnny Depp in particular, did an admirable job of really selling this role, which is maybe sort of against type at the time.
Because of its restraint and its simplicity. I feel like pretty boys are always trying to shake off that pretty boy label and get grungy.
Yeah, Ryan Phillippe, The Way of the Gun style.
Right. But he has definitely moved into that stage in his life where he looks like he smells.
In this movie?
Right? No, now. Johnny Depp.
Yeah. Well, he's old and he does smell.
And he's greasy and he always wears those blue tinted glasses. He's kind of like in his Billy Bob Thornton mode.
Yeah.
And so it's really hard not to take all of the baggage, the varied and vastly different performances, and then all of the personal stuff that's come to the public light about Johnny Depp and Amber Heard, etc. It's hard not to project all that onto this very innocent J.M. Barrie character, who is played by Johnny Depp as being very restrained and kind of very childlike. And that's in contrast to the Freddie Highmore character, who kind of never has a chance to be a child. Why did you say that Freddie Highmore looks... So before we started recording, you said that Freddie Highmore looks like an apple. Why is that?
He's just a little head sticking out of the collar, and he's got like a bright, shiny face. He looks like a little apple. He's just like a little dumpling head and an apple dumpling head.
It really bothers me that people think that this season's all about pumpkins. Did you know that pumpkin season is also apple season?
Oh, I'm very sorry that it's challenging. Look, you're up against the white women, and the white women cannot stop.
What is your opinion on the PSL?
I got no problem with it. I think that it's weird that the fanaticism starts in particular for the season. Like it's like McRib or something. People freak out. It's like, oh, it's time for PSLs, like on September 1st or something. I find that a little bit weird. But as a flavor, I have no problem with pumpkin or pumpkin spice. Pumpkin pie being, I think, Dad's favorite, in which they have all year round.
I can't decide what I'm more surprised about, that you've got nothing against it or that you knew what the PSL is.
Absolutely.
Wow.
White women are my favorite thing. A white woman in particular who is no fan of the PSL. You know what we discovered this year is Kelly Ray was fascinated to discover that when someone bought one for her, she actually likes pumpkin spice lattes, but also because they're not really pumpkin flavored. They are the spices attributed to pumpkins in the drink.
Like nutmeg and stuff?
Yeah, and cinnamon and nutmeg and stuff. She's like, oh, they're not pumpkin coffees. They're the spices.
So Brian got me a PSL as a little surprise treat. And then after I had diarrhea, I was like, you know what? I think for PSLs in the future, just half sweet. And he was like, that was half sweet. I was like, what?
Oh,
what?
Man. Yeah, that's how they get them. It's like caffeine is the new tobacco. The Starbucks drinks, some of them don't even have coffee in them. They're just Sunday sugar bombs, man.
Oh, my gosh.
That's how they get the kids. And then you're hooked.
I don't know how to come back from this tangent other than...
No, this is just a nice warm blanket of a fall Thanksgiving season movie.
Yeah, good for the whole family. Watch it and be inspired and be transported back to the imaginative world of your childhood.
And you're going to bring it up, so I'm going to head you off at the pass because Mark Forster was responsible for A Man Called Otto. But I was no fan of that movie. And Mark Forster seems an unlikely person because in the promo stuff for the junket for this movie, they were like, oh yeah, man. And I was really excited to see this from the dude who directed Monsters Ball, among other things. And later he went on to World War Z. But I almost couldn't trust it. And Kate Winslet is no stranger to hardcore nudity kind of roles and stuff. And Mark Forster, it's like they're all like, okay, guys, let's keep it civil and let's keep it family friendly for this one. Try to hold it in, try to restrain it.
This is like a whole bunch of hardcore filmmakers making a highly restrained and highly PG movie.
Right? And how do you do that? I guess you evoke a sense of imagination. And it's maybe, I think, the movie's greatest strength, where we seamlessly transition from fantasy to reality and vice versa. And you see it up top, and they kind of continue that thread so that when it happens, the big reveal at the end, you're not like, what? Like, it makes sense.
I'd be interested in exploring this connection further because the hardcoreness goes all the way up to the producing ranks. Like Richard Gladstein, who was a mentor of mine when I was in the START program, and who was a very generous mentor, was also was a producer on Quentin Tarantino's early films.
Hey, it's Kaylee Cuoco for Priceline. Ready to go to your happy place for a happy price? Well, why didn't you say so? Just download the Priceline app right now and save up to 60% on hotels. So whether it's Cousin Kevin's Kazoo Concert in Kansas City, go Kevin, or Becky's Bachelorette Bash in Bermuda, you never have to miss a trip ever again. So download the Priceline app today. Your savings are waiting.
Go to your happy place for a happy price. Go to your happy price, Priceline.
Life is hard, but finding a really great podcast makes the days go by so much easier. Hi, my name is Blue Telusma. I'm a writer, an emotional intelligence coach, and the host of Humanize with Blue Telusma, a podcast where we believe that when you humanize everyone in the room, a great conversation is almost guaranteed. Join us every week here on Electricast as me and my guest co-hosts unpack big topics and interview even bigger personalities with a sense of humor and a dash of mischief. If you're looking for a new best friend in your head, we've got you covered. Electricast.
I mean, maybe you just got to do what you got to do to make it. And maybe Mark Forster made his impression on Hollywood with films like Monsters Ball. And then they're like, okay, we're going to give you the big family-friendly studio piece. As I was mentioning earlier, the Barry story is challenging. Barry is a very short little guy and had a giant walrus mustache and stuff. And Johnny Depp, like if he had known someone's going to play you 100 years from now, it wouldn't have been someone who looked like Johnny Depp. They took a lot of liberties with the chronology. Yes, both Sylvia and her husband were ill and passed away, but not at the time. The husband was alive and well during all the way up to the opening of Peter Pan. Did you notice there was no postscript on all the magical, wonderful things the kids grew up to get to?
Yes, I did notice that. There was no based on a true story. There was no J.M. Barrie died happy and childless at the age of blah, blah, blah. Nothing like that.
Apparently, Peter Pan wasn't even based on the Peter kid. We don't know why he named his character Peter Pan. It was actually based more on the son, Michael, who I guess had to grow up too fast or felt like a very adult kind of person. And Barry was like, this kid really should enjoy his childhood more. But the Peter kid, who was forever associated with Peter Pan, had a hard time, threw himself under a train at like the age of 60. The other three boys, none of them made it past 21. It's very, very tragic. So they took this little kernel, this little seed of hope and magic that was part of these kids' lives, this family's life, and they made a movie about it.
A movie inspired by it.
Right. And so it's nice, and you should all hug your children closer or whatever, because they might throw themselves under a train.
I think the script could have solved a lot of problems by having the Llewellyn Davies dad around. You know, all of these questions of infidelity and inappropriateness with the boys and all that kind of stuff wouldn't exist, but maybe we would have lost a lot of that drama. And then the J.M. Barrie character would have been seen as, he's like a larger than life character in his simplicity, and maybe we would have lost some of that too. But I remember from one of the behind the scenes featurettes a while ago in my research for preparing to meet with Richard Gladstein, they were talking about how producer Nellie Bellflower basically found this story or found the play and got the rights and assembled the team to develop the script. And it's one of these lovely creative producer-driven projects that was like a big inspiration to me when I was trying to come up as a producer and stuff. But do you know who Nellie Bellflower is?
Nope.
One of the few moments where I get to blow your mind. Nellie Bellflower, Oscar-nominated Best Picture producer, Nellie Bellflower of Finding Neverland, was the tree in The Last Unicorn.
That's pretty random, man. So she was all trucking around in like the early 80s being a tree, and she's like, I'm gonna be a producer.
I'm just saying, there's no height or depth that you can't come from and then be a producer. She is full on, there is no immortality than the love of trees. And like all trapping, what's the wizard's name in her boobs? Schmendrick the Great.
Schmendrick.
It's I, Schmendrick.
Sit down. Have a taco.
My problem with the Barry character types is that because they don't have a single mean bone in their body, somehow the bad things that they do are excused. He wasn't ignoring his wife out of malice. He didn't, basically abandon her because he was mean. He simply did it because he was enraptured by his flights of fancy. And it's like, no, that's no excuse. If you're a real adult in a real relationship, you say, you know what? This isn't working for me anymore. I'm really sorry, and I wish it didn't come to this. But I'm going to spend all my time with this family over here.
He's a child, and children have no regard for their parents. All they want to do is play with their friends, and all these kids were his friends. But she didn't have, I wondered why she kept putting up with him. She kept giving him all these chances. If you're not going to invest, then we're going to be done. And I was like, weren't you done a half an hour ago? But she makes her own choices. He's so clearly gone that when she hooks up with Mr. What's-his-name, I was a little bit surprised that he was like, he was accusatory or he was resentful.
Yeah.
I thought he was going to be like, I wish you every happiness and I'm sorry I couldn't have been that person. And then she smooches him on the cheek. It seemed like we're neatly taking care of the wife problem so that he can focus on his strangely platonic relationship with Sylvia. It spoke to that level of discord in the family and made it not entirely a fantasy where the two families would join and become one big happy household sharing the cleaning staff,
That seemed to be his dream, right? That there was some symbiosis between the two families.
I'm not sure. Just in his life, he needed to reconcile his weird passions and affection for this family with his wife, who he didn't dislike. Like, they didn't hate each other. He just kept disappearing, and she was like, what's up?
Yeah, he also kept inviting her to the park and stuff, and she was like, no thanks.
Well, there you go.
So it was mutual.
I don't know. It's all muddy and fantasy, and I don't know who to point a finger at. Is Mother Hook, was she wrong to be concerned? Like, you think, oh, she's Captain Hook, but it's true. She was looking out for her grieving daughter, trying to protect her grandsons. And he says in no uncertain terms, after the kid is gone, after her child dies tragically, and they're walking along and talking about her being forced to co-parent with him, and he's like, I loved your daughter very much. And I was like, well, there it is. There's kind of revelation. But I didn't feel like it was neutered enough that I didn't have to worry too much about who got butthurt in the interactions. I guess because we got Peter Pan out of it, and that's really all we need.
Do you find Peter Pan to be, I know Peter Pan's a classic and all, but do you find it to be a particularly relevant story to you?
With respect, I find Peter Pan to be so tiresome at this point.
Really?
It's just the saturation of Peter Pan in my life is just too. And look, I like all that stuff. I liked the 2003 Peter Pan. I liked Hook. I'm so over it because they keep making Peter Pans. They keep making Tarzan movies, and it's just like we got to get some new stuff in public domain because I am sick to death. That said, I like the Peter Pan ride at Disneyland, Peter Pan's flight and stuff.
The best.
And I do like the story. It speaks to the Neverland and forever remaining a child and maintaining that innocence. All that stuff is great. But also this movie, 80% of it takes place in the real world where people die, and there are consequences to being absent from your household and your spouse and stuff.
And kids grow up.
It's fine as a fantasy. You can't live your life as Peter Panning, as an adult. That was a reference to Hook.
Can you not?
You can't live Peter Pan as an adult because Peter Pan is forever a child. And that is great. It's also kind of where that story needs to remain as an affectionate memory from your childhood. Like if you see a grown person being Peter Pan, you're like, oh, that's scary. The closest thing we have to an adult Peter Pan is Michael Jackson, and that's not going to work.
Oh, who literally had a Neverland ranch.
And I don't mean to say that like I'm not going to make that funny or whatever. I'm just saying Peter Pan doesn't work as a fully functioning adult.
I thought Kelly MacDonald made a great Peter Pan.
Yeah, she continues the long-standing tradition of women playing Peter Pan.
And such a contrast to her other Llewellyn-related role. When they're on the bench and they're chatting at the very end, and then J.M. Barrie gives Freddie Highmore a hug, I found that to be really striking because I realized that he basically never touches them.
Got to be careful. And also, wasn't it through 6 layers of clothes and an overcoat and gloves?
Yeah, and outside and in the park and public and stuff like that. So the oldest boy literally has the moment where he becomes a man. He has a scene where he becomes a man in this movie.
Yep.
Barrie says, and there it is. You've transformed in front of my eyes. Did you have that moment?
Me personally, when I was like, I am now a man?
Mm-hmm.
I don't think so. I think that like Barrie, I retain some sense of childhood or irresponsibility. Like I just decided I was never going to learn Excel. I flat out refused in school to learn to use the card catalog system. And I was right in doing that because it's now entirely obsolete. But there are blind spots that I simply refuse to do. I'm just not going to adult in those respects. I hate paperwork and I will let things go completely to hell for lack of filling out paperwork or maintaining diligence on insurance and stuff. Oh, I hate all that crap. I mean, there are moments in my life where I was like, maybe too young for this, but I forged ahead anyway.
Keeping it alive, keeping the innocence alive. All right, so then, does Finding Neverland work for you?
It worked in the same stone-faced, I guess, typical Wesley fashion. I watched it and I was like, okay, I see what he's doing there and the strength and Mark Forster's stamp in his direction. Why does he deserve to be here? Oh, I can see it in the seamless transition between reality and fantasy. And all that was neat and lovely. And we're supposed to not really be seeing it for ourselves as much as through the eyes of the boys and trying to maintain a stranglehold on their innocence, on their boyhood. All that's great, But it felt convenient to me that the dad was out of the picture. It felt convenient that Sylvia then became ill, which absolved him of being a hypocrite to his wife. See, nothing's going on. She's sick. She doesn't want to do anything anyway. It felt like an appropriation of history and factual events, Saving Mr. Banks style. The wife was neatly taken care of because she found love or happiness somewhere else and was still there at his premiere and to give him a kiss on the cheek. Johnny Depp said that Mark Forster was good at manufacturing emotion, and then he clarified that comment by saying that he really makes sure that you feel a certain emotion going into every scene because he rejects inauthenticity altogether. But I think it was a little bit telling because I think that this movie was manufactured emotion kind of from the start. How do we push all the buttons on an otherwise seemingly unromantic story to make it feel goody? I think I felt that sort of the whole time. This feels like a very fall trench coat PSL kind of movie to me.
So you were resisting the manipulation most of the time?
Well, that's what movies do, are forced or imposed manipulation of your emotions. You're looking at a screen and a bunch of people playing people that they're not, trying to make you feel emotions. And sometimes it works more than others, but I got nothing against Finding Neverland. It had a nice dreamy quality that when it opens up into the fantasy stuff, I did feel it a little bit when they did the stupid thing at the end when they're in Neverland. And I was like, this is silly because we've seen in movies that year, as a matter of fact, we had seen much more immersive Neverland kind of qualities. This always still had a kind of a stage aspect, where, oh, there's the fawn right there nibbling the branch or whatever. It felt appropriate tonally, and that's the best that I can say for what this movie tried to achieve. I think it did it.
Well, way to dampen everyone's Thanksgiving spirit, Wes.
What? She gets up, walks out into Neverland at the end, and then dies. And we do a fade from the glow of the Neverland setting sun to her pile of dirt grave.
She's gone someplace better. That's what they're trying to communicate. Pile of dirt grave.
You know what this movie is? This movie is a fades to white kind of movie.
Well, that seems neutral enough.
The terrible stuff in real life and in the movie, the terrible things happen to this poor family. It's more wistful and magical. And then the movie fades to white because fading to black would have been too ominous.
I do find that Finding Neverland works. And that despite the machinations or manipulations, it is soothing and calming and balming.
Sometimes, look, a lot of this movie is from the kid's perspective, and it's meant to evoke innocence and magic where you're not supposed to question the intents of adults. It's almost as though Sylvia and the dad, you can't hide the coughing from the kids forever. You can't ignore the fact that Barry is having issues at home, even though he's going to come and play with you almost every day in the park or whatever. But maybe their relationship is fine as the kids perceive it or whatever. A lot rests on the kids. Little apple-faced Freddie Highmore has a big career ahead of him or whatever. But you got to resist the schmaltz, because if you hand stupid Michael the stupid rope and give him too much credit, then he's going to let go of the stupid rope and somebody's going to get hurt. And this movie didn't shy away from that stuff. It was just more from a kid's perspective, where bones will heal and fractured marriages, the people will find love and all that kind of stuff. It was fine. It was just fine.
It was all right.
Yeah, it was all right. Everybody, whether or not they live or die or end up happy or end up sad, it's 100 years ago, so they're all dead anyway.
So it's official, an all right from Wes, a good from Iris. For this Thanksgiving season family film, 818-835-0473 or whatevermovies@gmail.com. We love to hear from you, so please reach out. We also appreciate your 5-star reviews and smashing that subscribe button.
Nope.
And if appropriate, giving us 5-star reviews. Thank you for listening to this discussion on Finding Neverland from 2004, and happy Thanksgiving. We'll see you next time.
Hey, what's happening out there, everybody? This is Lawrence Ross, and I'd like to tell you a little bit about my podcast, The Lawrence Ross Show. Egomaniac. It's a 2-hour weekly exploration into my mind. I also do sketches, celebrity impersonations. You're out of order! And I also do song parodies. Not too shabby for a blind guy.
Not only are you visually impaired, but you are geographically impaired.
New episodes are released every Friday. Check it out on your favorite podcasting platform or listen to it here on Society 13 on Electrocast.
Hey there, I'm DC. I host the rock podcast, Back to the Arena, The Interviews. It's about a 30-minute podcast where I talk one-on-one with a band who has released new music. You can find us on all the best podcast sites like Spotify, Apple, Google, iHeartRadio, and more. If you're a rock fan like me, subscribe today to Back to the Arena, The Interviews.
Electrocast. Electrocast.